high, and then they run over to the theater and teach the high school. Tonight that was literally true. I walked down the hall, I'm like, I don't hear any music, I'm in trouble. And then I heard Leland, where'd Leland go? I heard Leland praying, I'm like, okay, we can do this. So, deep breath, eh? I gotta tell you, some of you used to be junior high students, right?
Yeah.
Let that settle in. That group over there really is engaged in what we're talking about. And I hope you guys can harness some of that tonight and really think. Because we're going to fly through a lot of stuff fairly quickly. And I don't want you to miss something. And then, I don't know if you're like me, if you miss one thing, then all of a sudden you try to check back in and you're too far behind and you give up. I hope that's not you tonight. Let me encourage you just to, maybe even if you have to, turn to your neighbor and just say, you know, for the next half hour or so, let's just focus in on what God wants to say here through Pastor Joey. Does that sound good? Can we do that? All right? Right on. Okay. Good. So, we're wrapping up our series on apologetics. We call this series Point of Tension. And in this series, and I know we hit three talks before Christmas, and we're kind of wrapping up tonight after Christmas. I know, not ideal, right? Hopefully when you checked out from school, and maybe some of you checked out of the country, some of you checked out of your homes, maybe went and slept at grandma's for a bit. Hopefully you didn't check out of your faith, and hopefully you didn't check out of thinking about this. Maybe, and maybe some of these stories were shared with Nick when you had your show and tell time. Maybe some of you actually used some of the things you've been learning about and used them around the Christmas dinner table or around Christmas time or when you're talking to family or friends or whatever, in perhaps a little bit more of a relaxed environment. Who knows? I hope so. I pray so. When we were talking before Christmas, we said a good apologetic has 4 pillars. And again, think pillars like the things that hold up the little under-ramp dealie at the front of the church, you know, where you drive under and Grandma gets out, or if some of you are at the Christmas banquet where the little horsey was, you know, think of those 4 pillars, okay, that hold things up. The 4 pillars that hold up the Christian faith. We looked at absolute truth, the need for that, okay? We looked at the need for God. Remember we said how the creation and the created cry out for a creator. Okay, so the need for God based on what's around us. All right? Then we looked and intern Nick did a great job. In fact, so good of a job that I think I'm going to steal all of his material and reteach it as my own when I'm starting this series with the young adults on Thursday night. So I'm thinking, Nick, I don't know if you can handle this. You just sit back. I'll take over and I'll just use all this stuff because it was really good stuff, you know. But he gave us a great lesson just before Christmas on why the Bible can be considered the key communique from God to man. God's love letter, if you will. Tonight we want to deal with Jesus. We want to deal with the Sunday school answer. We want to deal with the claims that Jesus made. Most of us, and I don't want to take anything for granted because I know that there's always new people here. I know that some people maybe have been around a while, but their knowledge of Scripture and Jesus and all these things maybe isn't where it's supposed to be. I had a friend when I was, I think, 18 or 19. He made a decision for Christ, and which was great. And then we started bringing him out to like youth retreats and youth meetings and stuff like that. And one time we were away somewhere for the weekend, and we were going to bed, and we're like, all right, we're going to get up because Sunday school starts at 9 or whatever. He goes, I don't know if I want to go. And we, oh, what's the problem, man? What's going on? He goes, well, you know what? I really feel kind of stupid when you guys are talking and you know what you're talking about. And I just don't know. Okay? And we're like, oh, wow, okay. So and we're a little bit more sensitive and you try. So I can appreciate that in this room, even maybe there's some of you going, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so we want to just kind of make sure we understand. When we talk about Jesus, Jesus makes this claim. It's kind of summarized in this verse that's found in John chapter 14, verse 6, where he says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Jesus must be dealt with. The claims he makes must be dealt with. And we're going to spend most of our time tonight, hopefully, dealing with some of that. We talked about 4 goals that we want to have in a good apologetic. The first goal is to love those who don't love God. If we truly understand who God is and what He's about, and we truly understand people who don't know Jesus, we should be loving them. When Jesus came, He didn't come to condemn, He came to save. Right? And so we want to build a love for those who don't love God. We want our goal we have is to know what we believe. Okay? We want to be able to give a good defense to others, and we want to be able to give a good defense to self. And then remember we talked about what a point of tension is. And I've kind of defined it this way. A point of tension describes the exact point where someone struggles in understanding and or moving forward in their walk with God. Pinpointing someone's point of tension can help direct or clarify the conversation. So it's being able to take someone and saying, so you're not a Christian, so tell me about it. Right? And going right down and saying, what is it exactly that you're struggling with? What is it that's keeping you from moving forward with God? It's like when you're sitting in the doctor's office and you're sitting there all by yourself in that room and you sort of half hearing conversations going on and you're wondering when he's going to come in, and fortunately you have your phone so you can play around with that and kill time while you're waiting, and then the door opens and friendly Mr. Doctor guy walks in, so hey, what's the problem? And you're like, guess. You know, no, you tell him. The last time I was at the doctor's, I had poison ivy all over my knee and the bottom of my leg, and I had shorts on. He walks in, he goes, all right, so what's the problem? Other than you need to lose weight. I'm like, thank you, doctor. You know? And I just looked at him and I pulled up my shorts a little bit and exposed my poison ivy. And he's just like, oh, okay. Wrote the prescription, away you go, right? And we're all good. And but we've got to sort of zero in on what exactly is the problem. That's what we're talking about when we talk about point of tension. What exactly is it? And I pray that as you go to your small groups tonight, that if nothing else, each of you will be able to say, you know what, this is my point of tension. And even if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're someone who says, you know what, I work at summer camp, I've been baptized, I come to youth group, I go to church, I work in the nursery, I do all these things, but I actually kind of struggle with this piece of it. This is the place to talk about it and to work it through and to be honest enough with each other. Okay? All right, so when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about someone who makes absolutely outrageous claims about himself. Okay? I want to show you this. Hopefully we're all queued up, all your minds. I posted that video on posted that video on my Facebook page, and so feel free to look at it. I've watched it about 10 times now, and I'm like, I think I got about 65 to 70% of that. It's really worth thinking through, and if you really want to think through and read through some stuff, Rabbi Zacharias is someone you want to get engaged with. Okay? If you think you're too smart for Christianity, start reading some of his stuff and tell me how smart you are. Okay? Yeah. I love reading this guy's stuff, and you know, I'll read a few pages and go, wow, I just got to think for a while. And anyway, so tonight we want to look at 4 words. For some of you are like, okay, I've sort of heard this before, but I want to look at 4 words, and I want you to think through. When we're dealing with Jesus, we can usually categorize ourselves under one of these 4 words. Either we think of him as a legend, a liar, a lunatic, or as Lord of all. Okay? And most of us, if we're thinking and engaging with somebody, we should be able to come up with what it is they think about Jesus. You know how it's, let me give you a good trick on how to do that. Anybody want a good trick on how to engage someone and find out what they think about Jesus? You ready for this? Are you writing this down? You walk up to them and say, so what do you think about Jesus? You see that? Write it down. Okay? And when it works, think of me. All right? You're welcome. And let them tell you. And when they tell you what they think, follow up and kind of push lovingly. But push to make them really think about what they think about Jesus. Okay? Some people think he's a legend. All right? Now, when we're talking about legends, most of you didn't have the privilege of growing up watching the greatest player to ever lace up skates play hockey. My 3-year-old could tell you. Number 4, Bobby Orr. We went to Boston for Christmas. Hey, this is my sermon. I'm going to talk about my favorite hockey guy. Went to Boston for Christmas. And we're getting pretty jazzed up about the trip. Ellie's pretty excited. And she keeps asking me, Daddy, are we going to see Bobby Orr? Wow. If you can do your math, you understand Bobby Orr's like almost 70 years old now. And it doesn't really appear in Boston all that often. But when he does, it's quite something. I was pretty sure he wouldn't be there. But there was a statue that they made for him outside the stadium. So I kind of half-lied a little bit. We'll get to that one in a second. And I said, you know what? Yeah, sure. Bobby Orr's going to be there. So we get there late Monday night. And then the day of the game that we're going to is on Tuesday. I get up Tuesday morning, and usually in our little plan, I'm up early, and so is my daughter. And so we went for a walk down to the stadium together. And in the pouring rain. And we're walking down, about a half-hour walk from our hotel room to the stadium. I did it several times. And as we're walking down in the rain, she keeps asking me if we're going to see Bobby Orr. And I keep telling her, maybe. And she comes around the corner, there's a statue. She sees it, and I'm thinking, oh boy, she's going to realize I was kind of lying to her. And she's like, Bobby Orr! And she goes running over and starts looking up at it. And it was awesome. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's him right there. Right? Some of us think about Jesus that way. We're like, yeah, Jesus, the guy on the cross. Yeah, I like your cross. I like your cross. Oh, but your cross is nice. Yours is shiny. Yours is wooden. Great, Jesus. Yeah, you know, there's a story about him. I remember going to Sunday school and I heard about Jesus. I remember going to a summer camp and hearing about this Jesus. He sounds like he was a great guy. And we start kind of putting him in this category of, oh yeah, I sort of kind of think I heard about him. I kind of think I have some ideas about what he might be like. And I might even tell you if you ask me, you know, Jesus, great teacher. You know how I like to respond to that one? Great teacher, really? Because he taught that you're going to hell. How great is that of a teacher? Oh. Well, but he loves people. I'm like, yes. He loved them enough to die for their sins so you don't have to go to hell. Right? That's how much he loves you. Oh. You know? Maybe he wasn't a great teacher. Well, actually, he was, because he told you the truth, and he, you know, and so on, right? And so we kind of put him in this category of legend. You know, he's out there somewhere, and we kind of think about him sometimes, and we have a little bumper sticker response when it comes up in world religions class or whatever, and we sort of have a thing we think about, and we put him in that category, and we just leave him there. Here's the problem. The evidence, there's just far too much of it to dispute this thought. He actually did exist. He actually did walk the face of the earth. The other thing we could think about then, okay, if he actually existed and he actually did all the things that the scripture and then the historical books, Sam Crow Stop Talking, talk about, okay? When he actually did all these things and said all these things, then he must be a liar. Now, let me ask you a question. I want you to think about this for a bit. How badly do you have to want to cling to a lie to actually have nails hammered through your hands or your wrists? Right? How badly do you have to cling to a lie that you're willing to have a crown of thorns jammed onto your skull and be whipped till your flesh is ripping open? How badly do you want to cling to that lie? When I was in grade school, I went to Osgood Public School, home of Karen Granville, who's still there to this day. And I went there with my older brother, Mike, 2 years older than me, way smarter than me, I know. And we grew up on a farm, so we bust into town, and one day we discovered the corner store, right, Sauve's. And we discovered that if we snuck off of the school property, we could walk down to the corner store and buy a bag of chips or a chocolate bar or something, or Popeye's candy sticks. We called them Popeye cigarettes back then, no candy. And it was awesome. So we'd sneak down the thing and we'd buy our stuff and we'd sneak it back and we'd eat it and we thought we were great until we ran out of money. Right? And you got to remember, my dad was a school teacher. And he used to come home from school, and he was a great guy, but he wasn't all that organized, and he just sort of emptied his pockets out. And he dumped change on his dresser in his room. And my brother's like, hey, I know where there's money. So we'd go in. It seemed like it lasted forever. Probably only lasted a week or so. We'd go steal his money. Pockets, to the corner store. Chips, chocolate bars, you name it. And it was great. Every day I loved going to school, you know? And one day, I got there, I got my bag of chips, and I'm walking in, and I'm so excited. And I walk into the schoolyard, and I'm holding my chips, and all of a sudden I look up and I see the principal, Mr. Holmes. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and I do the classic grade 5 move. You know? And I'm just like, hey, Mr. Holmes, good to see you, man. Yeah, just going to class. Yeah, okay. And then he let me go by, and I immediately did that. And then I'm walking thinking, yes, I got away with it. And then I hear my name. And he calls me back, and he puts out the hand, and I give him the chips. And he asks where I got it, and I keep lying. He goes, no problem, go sit in my office, I'll call your mom. Now again, remember, my dad was a school teacher. At the time, he taught at a school over in Metcalf, and him and Mr. Holmes were actually pretty good buddies. So he calls my dad and tells his mom. My mom comes, picks us up, we get in the back of the station wagon, and she gives us the old, wait till your father gets home. Right? I'm like, oh, jeez, I'm in trouble. So we get, and we're waiting, and Mike and I are waiting in the one room, and Mom and Dad are talking in the kitchen about how they're going to handle us. And Mike goes to me, don't worry, I figured this out. I'm like, God, you're so much smarter than me. He goes, when you go in there, just tell them the whole truth, and they'll go easy on us. We'll just tell them the complete truth that we're guilty, we stole the money, we snuck off, the whole deal, and they'll go easy on us because, you know, that's what parents want to hear is the truth. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, that's the plan. Great, okay. So they call me in first. What happened? I just unload the truth, just like I told you. I'm sorry, it was me, I'm sorry. Okay, where you go? They call Mike in. So what happened? I don't know, Joey stole all the money. I didn't do anything. It wasn't me at all. I didn't even go to the store. It was our... It completely threw me under the bus. And I paid for it. You know, back then you actually had negative reinforcement that hurt for a while. And, you know, I'm like, man. But I don't know if you know that feeling of it when you're lying about something, you just keep hanging on to it. It just kind of rots away inside of you. And that's what sin is supposed to do, by the way. So it's working, you know, when you find yourself in that situation. But I have to ask myself, if someone said Jesus was just lying to everyone because he wanted the attention, I don't know. I think you've got to really want people to believe your lie pretty badly to go through what he went through in order to hold up from telling the truth. Does that make sense? A little bit? So push people on that. Push yourself on that. Okay? Lunatic. Was he crazy? Right? How was he able to engage in such debates in such an impacting way? Think about it. If he was completely nuts, how could he come up with the way in which he was able to interact with people? Because regardless of what you think about what he did and how it all played out, he was a brilliant mind. He knew scriptures way better than anybody else. He knew how to interpret them. He knew what was the meaning behind them. He was able to engage with the brightest religious minds of the day. He was a smart guy for a crazy guy. Right? If he was crazy, how did he handle the stress of the crucifixion, while at the same time showing such a love for his antagonists? In other words, how did he keep it all together? You know, if you're a little bit crazy, if you will, and the stress comes, you're going to show that. Okay? You can't handle it, but somehow he's able to handle it and keep it together, especially when the pressure of the crucifixion that we already talked about came upon him. So think about that. Press that. He wasn't just some well-meaning guy who was a little bit nuts, walking around in a robe saying, hey, I'm Jesus, I'm God. Right? There's way too much substance to who he was to let someone off the hook with a statement like that. And then the last category that I guess we all knew we were getting to is that he might actually be Lord. And if I was to make a correction on my slide, I have the ORD in capitals as well. He might actually be Yahweh. He might actually be that great I am. And if he is, how is it that we can prove that? Let's walk through a few of those in the time we have left. One, proof of the resurrection. The resurrection is central to the Christian faith. Okay? When you ask me what's the most important thing about what we believe as Christians, the most important thing we believe. Anna, could you just tell them I'll just keep staring at them until they stop talking? Thank you. Wonderful. The most important thing to what we believe is the fact that Jesus was actually resurrected. He actually defeated death. That's what gives him trump card over everything else. Like I was telling you before Christmas, you know, when I was in Megan's class at Longfields, and afterwards that young lady came and asked me, why do you believe what you believe is the right way to believe? And I just looked at her and I said, because Jesus, who I worship, actually defeated death. And I didn't say that to go, ooh, shut you down, you know, I win the arguments, because that's actually the truth. Paul outlines that in 1 Corinthians 15, when he says our faith is void, it's useless, it's pathetic, it's of no value if Jesus did not defeat death. And so as wonderful as it is to celebrate the cross and the fact that Jesus died for our sins and sign up for no other name and all that good stuff, it's important that we celebrate the resurrection. So that we celebrate the fact that he defeated death. Think about the resurrection for a few minutes. Jesus himself foretold his death, resurrection, and these events came about exactly as he had predicted. Walk through his predictions. He actually told us exactly what was going to happen, and then it happened. Small example, night before he's crucified, Peter, you're actually going to deny me. No, I'm not. Yes, you will. 3 times, then the rooster will crow. Exactly how it's going to happen. He laid it all out. And then it happened. In fact, he did a foreshadowing of what was going to happen in John chapter 11 when Lazarus dies. Remember the story of Lazarus? He's in the tomb for 4 days and his body's starting to decay, and Jesus comes and Mary and Martha are mad at him, and he looks at them and he says, listen, do you believe that I am the resurrection and the life, that he who believes in me will not die but live? Do you believe that? Well, yeah, I want to believe that. Good. Let's go resurrect a body. Let me show you that I have power over death. Come with me. Hey, Lazarus, get out. Whoa. What was he doing there? Well, a lot of things. But one thing that he was doing that you don't want to miss is that he was showing them, I have power over death, and I'm going to show it to you. Right? And then a little bit while later, he goes to the cross and he defeats death, and he shows them. He predicted all this. Okay? The event is so well documented by numerous reliable historical sources. It happened. He defeated death. He was resurrected. It's not just something we jump up and down on Easter Sunday because we're too hyped up on chocolate and so on about. It really happened. It's a historical fact. The resurrection is the only plausible explanation for the empty grave. People have thought and taught and tried to come up with reasons. You can almost see poor old Pilate when he finds out that his guards fell asleep and somehow the dead body rolled the tomb away and walked out. How he's going to come up with an answer for this that doesn't include the supernatural. It's the only explanation. There are a number of eyewitnesses. We talk about in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says, there's over 500 witnesses who are willing to come forward and witness the fact that they saw him alive. They walked with him. They talked with him. They poked their fingers in the holes in his hands and in his side. They are willing to testify that he is alive. Think about that for a minute. How many people do you need to witness to something before you'll believe it's true? The other day I had to have an awkward conversation with someone and I was a little bit nervous about it. So I said to my brother, although I don't know why I trusted him, because he's the same brother that buried me back when we were kids. But anyway, I said to my brother, I said, would you come with me? I'm a little bit anxious about this conversation. He said, sure. And we drove over there and he goes, so what do you want me to say? And I go, I actually don't want you to say anything, just pay attention. Because I may need a witness, depending on how this goes down. Oh, okay. And then we did the thing, it was no big deal, but I was happy he was there nonetheless. But I was thinking about it, I'm going, that would have been one, if something had gone really bad, I have one witness. And he's my brother. How much proof is that really? 500 people willing to say, yes, Jesus is alive. Defeated death. The resurrection is the only reasonable explanation for the beginning of the Christian movement. Think about it. Most people who didn't want Jesus to be God claimed him to be a great prophet. Great prophets came and went. You could go through the Old Testament and read about the major prophets, the minor prophets. Pick your prophet. They were all great, sort of. But they died. And after they died, at best they got a book written about them. Well, actually written by them, anyway. Right? And that was it. Nobody worships Jeremiah. Nobody worships Isaiah or Ezekiel or Obadiah. Right? Even though that's really fun to say, Obadiah. Right? Nobody worships these guys because they're dead. You shouldn't worship dead people. Right? That's just a common sense thing. But Jesus is alive, and the reason people worship him, the only way to explain it is because of the resurrection. They worship him because he's actually resurrected. And that's why the Christian movement started. The resurrection is the only logical explanation for the transformed lives of the disciples. Remember, these were 12 basically blue-collar guys wandering around following Jesus, more or less terrified. That's who these guys were. And somehow they were transformed into guys who were willing to go to the death for Jesus. And the only difference is the resurrection. Bracket, Holy Spirit's arrival in Acts chapter 2. I understand that. Close bracket, right? Okay? The resurrection, throughout the centuries, most great scholars who have considered the proofs of the resurrection have believed and still believe that Jesus is alive. Why do I have that there? Because I want you to think about this when you're thinking for yourself and when you're interacting with your friends. You can't, Simon, you can't let people off the hook when they say, I don't think he actually was resurrected. Okay? You can't let them off the hook with that. You need to push a little bit more. Well, why don't you think that? Well, I don't know. It just doesn't really kind of jive with what I believe. And how can it really happen? It's just not, it's like, how can you defeat death? It doesn't make sense. So I'm just going to choose not to believe it. How about study it? How about actually look at history? How about actually pick up a couple books? Wikipedia, for crying out loud. There's enough information there that will help you. But don't let yourself and don't let your friends off the hook with saying, I'm just not comfortable believing that, so I'm just going to let that, right? Okay, let's move on to the subjective argument. I love this one. Subjective argument basically is an argument that says, because it's true for me, it's true, right? One of my favorite things to do, and there she is. You put the pictures on Facebook, young lady. Now you got to own it, okay? One of my favorite things to do is baptize people, right? I love it. Part of the fun of baptizing is standing in the back of the church, backstage, if you will, with somebody who's just terrified, And they're kind of like, doing this, and they're, how do we do this again? I'm like, I will dunk you under the water, and then I'll bring you back up. That's how it's going to work. Okay. Can we go over that just one more time? Because I'm a little bit nervous. right? And some people are pretty cool, but most people are pretty anxious. And you should be, because you're willing to stand up in front of up to 1,000 people, most of which you don't know all that well, and say, I love Jesus. And I love him enough that I'm going to get baptized because he told me to do that. And I think that's awesome. And as an aside, if you haven't been baptized, it's time to step up. Right? I love it. Because no matter how terrified you are, you're willing to get up there and get baptized. Right? Subjective argument. What is the objective reality or basis for my subjective experience that is a life change? And the answer is the person of Christ and his resurrection. Think about this. Because of who Jesus is, because he defeated death, it actually changes the way I interact with people. I treat you differently because Jesus is alive. If Jesus wasn't alive, if you think I treat you badly now, imagine how I would treat you if Jesus wasn't alive. Right? I try, not always successfully, but I try to show the love of Jesus to everyone around me because he's alive. Because he's my Lord. I interact with people differently. I try to treat people the way he tells me to treat people. When I see the least of these, I try to interact in a way that would reflect honor and glory to his name. Why? Because he's alive. That's why we do what we do. And people should already be looking at your life, and it should be easy for you to share your faith because they're looking at you and going, something is different about you. Just tell me what it is. Right? Evangelism should be that easy because people see that difference, because we live it out. Not in a show-offy kind of way, but in a way that just says, I have got to engage my world differently because I serve our risen Savior. Right? Many students have had the same subjective experience from being related to the objective reality. How many others? Okay? When you think about it, simple math, since Christ left the earth, ascended into heaven, basically, more or less, 1/3 of the world has been followers of Christ. So even though you might walk through your schools, the hallways of your school and go, wow, like 1,000 people here and 4 of us showed up at Christian Club today. It might feel lonely sometimes. But you know what? Maybe you're the only Christian in your home. You go home every week after youth group going, wow. You know, I get it. Ottawa's a pretty lonely place spiritually. Only about 5% of our city actually follows Christ. But in the world, around the world, if we had more time, man, stuff is going on over this world where people are following Christ. You know, it's actually a really exciting time in history to be a follower of Jesus. Okay? First century Christians were transformed because of this news. James, Jesus' half-brother, if you will, Saul becoming Paul, okay? And unpackage these things a little bit more, sponsors and small groups as we're running out of time here. The impact, modern-day Christianity. Pick one of these historical characters, Lew Wallace, C.S. Lewis, or William and Catherine Booth. Pick one of those stories and Wikipedia before you go to bed tonight and read up on it. Awesome stuff of people who spent their lives being transformed and then transforming the world around them because of the resurrected Christ. What's the impact? I can only tell you from my own story. I was kind of a bored adolescent. I was kind of a guy that just sort of went to school, and if it wasn't for sports, I probably wouldn't have gone to the number of classes I even went to. You know, I was just kind of hanging out, waiting for the next hockey game, and just kind of, you know, and Jesus graciously got a hold of my life. And for what it's worth, I do what I do because Jesus is alive. I try my best to excite unexcitable youth with the exciting realities of Jesus the Christ. Why? Because he's alive. He actually defeated death, and he's my Lord. And I think it would be the best life choice you ever made to make him your Lord. You know, the impact, our church, the reason we do what we do is because Jesus is alive. The reason we spend all kinds of money and resources on youth ministry, on children's ministries, on mission trips all over the place. Why? Because Jesus is alive. If Jesus wasn't alive, we would shut this place down. You know? That's why we do what we do as a church. Let me ask you a question as we wrap up. How about you? What's the impact that Jesus has had on your life? believe that in this room, most of us would say, you know what, I've prayed a prayer, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm good to go, thank you. Is He your Lord? Has He completely transformed your life, or is He in the process of completely transforming your life to the point that you actually live life differently than the guy in the locker next to you? When people who know you would talk about you, would they say, yes, that person is a follower of Christ? Whether they laugh at you or not. Do they know? Has Jesus impacted your life? Is He in the process of impacting your life? Some resources to consider, okay? And some of you have been around long enough to know that I'm a big fan of More Than a Carpenter. You're going to find in your small group sponsors, I apologize for not getting you those questions sooner, but you'll see a little challenge. I think I call it Challenge 168 because there's 168 pages in this book. If your small group, and I mean your whole small group, reads the book and know you can't count that you read it 2 years ago, okay? If you read it as a group and your sponsor emails me or Pastor Matt or whoever and says, hey, our whole group read the book, we'll buy you a pizza party, okay? And of course you're smart enough to go, we're going to read the book, we're going to understand what Pastor Joey was talking about in way more detail, and we're going to have a pizza party that involves all of our lost friends, and it's going to be awesome. Right? Right? You're still sitting there going, pizza. Do you think He means pizza, or is it going to be the good stuff? You know? So, read the book. If you're going, you know what, I've read that book, it's good, love it, but I need something a little bit more, let me recommend to you C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity. Okay? Read this book and then tell me how smart you are. Okay? Read it through. I'd love to interact with you on that. Lee Strobel writes a bunch of good books as well, and so on. So there's lots of good resources there. If you're looking for more, drop me a note and I'll help you out. But make sure you've read these ones first, okay? All right. To wrap up, let me get this. Hopefully we understand this. The reason we need to wrestle with the claims Jesus made is because Jesus is a resurrected God. Okay? If you want the simple Cole's notes to this thing. The reason we wrestle with His claim that He is the way, the truth, and the life, and that nobody comes to the Father but through Him, and that He is God, those claims we wrestle with and we have to deal with because He defeated death. We can't let ourselves believe that He was just a legend or a liar or a lunatic and just sort of blow Him off. We have to wrestle with what He actually claimed about Himself because He defeated death. All right? And for yourself, don't let yourself off the hook. And certainly don't let your friends off the hook when you're discussing these things. Can I pray for you guys? I'll take that as a yes. God, thank You for this time. Thank You for these students. Thank You for Jesus. Thank You for the resurrection. I don't know what I'd do with my life if You did not defeat death for me. And Lord, I pray that in this room tonight, that those who are in love with You, God, that they would just be empowered and encouraged to go out and share Your good news and interact at even a deeper level with their friends and their family. And Lord, I pray for those who are in this room tonight who would say, you know what, I prayed a prayer, I come to church, I do youth group, but I just don't know if Jesus is my Lord or not. I don't know if I'm sold out to that level. God, would You give them the courage to give their all to You, even tonight? And God, if there's a question that they're just really struggling with, would You give them the courage to ask their sponsors, to come ask me afterwards, or Pastor Matt? And God, for those who are in the room tonight, they're just like, I'm just sort of here and I'm hearing all this for the first time, and I don't know what to do with it all. God, would You just give them the courage, and may they feel accepted as they go to their small groups, to be able to ask questions and figure things out. And God, respond to You as they grow to know You more and more. Holy Spirit, move in this place. God, thank You for sending Your Son. Jesus, thank You for dying and defeating death so that we could live forever and that we could live abundantly right now. May we do that in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. If you're brand new, first time out, welcome. Come sit right up here. Got a little gift for you. We'll take care of you. Otherwise, I hope you know where you're going.